Okay, imagine this for a second. You're out with your family, maybe just a quick walk, beautiful day. You look away for, maybe half a minute, less. You turn back, and your child, they're just gone, vanished. It's that nightmare scenario every parent dreads, and it's exactly what happened one day in Japan way back in 1989. So today, we're going to share the story of Shinya Matsuoka. He was 4 years old when he disappeared, leaving behind just a whole mess of questions and this mystery that still hasn't been solved. And this isn't straightforward, it's not just a missing person case. There are these really weird phone calls, sightings people reported that just went nowhere, and then decades later, this totally bizarre TV appearance that, for a moment, gave everyone hope before just crushing it. Our mission today, really, is to walk through the details, the theories, all the dead ends, and try to understand what might have happened that day and why this case, why it still haunts everyone involved. Okay, let's unpack this. Right, so the year is 1989. It's March. The Matsuoka family, living up in Ibaraki Prefecture, they get some terrible news.
Shinya's grandmother, his mother's mother, had passed away. So the whole family packs up, travels quite a distance down to Komatsushima in Tokushima Prefecture for the funeral. After the funeral, they didn't go straight home. They went to stay at a relative's place about an hour away in this small, pretty rural town called Saramitsu. So fast forward to the morning of March 7th. It's early. They decide to take a walk around the town. Shinya's mom stays back at the house, but his dad goes out with Shinya, his older sister, his little brother, and a couple of cousins who were also there. The walk itself, it wasn't long, maybe 10 minutes tops. But Shinya, being a 4-year-old, he wanted to keep exploring. So when they get back to the relative's house, the dad's carrying the youngest, the baby. The other kids are kind of following along. Shinya's lagging behind a little bit, but still, visible. They reach the house. The dad ducks inside really quickly just to hand the baby off to his wife, like down a short hall and back. It couldn't have taken more than, say, 20 seconds, maybe 40 at the absolute most. He turns around, comes back to the doorway. Shinya's not there. He's just gone. Vanished. In that tiny, tiny window. Immediately, the family starts searching, frantic. And the police get involved. Hundreds of local people join in, combing the town, the woods around it. Nothing. No sign of him. He just evaporated.
And that moment, that vanishing act, becomes even more baffling when you really picture the place. Saramitsu, you said it was rural. Can you give us a better sense of that environment? Because the setting itself seems critical here.
Yeah, absolutely. What can you tell us about Saramitsu?
Well, Saramitsu, as a town name, it actually doesn't even exist anymore, officially. It merged with other towns back in the mid-2000s. But before that, around the time Shinya disappeared, it had roughly maybe 5,700 people spread out over about 17 square miles.
Okay, 17 square miles, 5,700 people. That sounds pretty scarce.
It is. I mean, for comparison, think about Manhattan. It's only slightly bigger, maybe 23 square miles, but it has, 1.6 million people? So Saramitsu is definitely rural, lots of wilderness, a river nearby. But here's the thing, they weren't completely isolated. There were houses around, neighbors, the catch. Apparently, none of those neighbors even knew the Matsuoka family was staying there. Looking at old photos from around 91, you see both, wild areas and pockets of civilization.
Right. So not the middle of nowhere, but also not a busy street.
Exactly. It's this kind of double-edged sword for the investigation. On one hand, the wilderness makes abduction seem possible, or maybe getting lost and searching that area is incredibly tough. But on the other hand, pulling off an abduction in a small community like that, where everyone kind of knows everyone without a single person seeing anything after he vanished from the doorway, that seems really difficult too. How does a kid just disappear without a trace in a place like that? It's this weird mix of isolation and community that makes it so confusing.
Yeah, it really adds to the puzzle. So, okay, Shinya's gone. The search is fruitless. The family's just reeling. Yeah. What happens next? I know they set up a recorder on their phone.
Mm-hmm. Desperate for any lead.
And that leads to probably the strangest part of this whole thing. Mm-hmm. They get this phone call. A woman calls, and the family notices she has a very specific Tokushima accent, suggesting she's local to where they are staying. She asks for Shinya's mother, Kaiko. And then she starts this story. She says she's the mother of a girl named Mariko Nakahara who goes to Seiki kindergarten.
Which Keiko would recognize immediately.
Right, because that's the kindergarten Shinya's older sister attended back home in Ibaraki, hundreds of miles away. So this woman, this caller, says she heard about Shinya, and she started a collection, a fund, for the family. She wants to know where to send the money. And then she asks, when are you planning to go back to Ibaraki?
And the timing of that question is just uncanny.
Unbelievably so.
Right.
Because they were planning to leave the very next day. So this call, what were the immediate red flags for you? What felt off.
Well, almost everything, honestly. It's deeply unsettling because later, after this Mrs. Nakahara never followed up, Keiko did the logical thing. She called Seiki Kindergarten back in Ibaraki about this supposed fund.
And
Nothing. The school had no idea what she was talking about. No fund existed. And worse, there was no student named Mariko Nakahara enrolled there at all.
wow. Okay, so the whole story was fabricated.
Completely, it seems. And that just blows open all these questions. If the caller was from Tokushima, like her accent suggested, how on earth did she know such specific details about their life in Ibaraki? The specific kindergarten. Some reports even say she knew the sisters group within the kindergarten.
That's incredibly specific.
Right. But then, flip it. If she was from Ibaraki, somehow faking the accent, how did she know about Shinya's disappearance down in Tokushima just a week after it happened? This was before it became a national news story.
Okay, yeah, the timing is weird there, too.
And maybe the biggest question, how did she get their private phone number in Tokushima? The number at the relative's house. Only the immediate family and maybe a few very close friends would have had that number at that point.
So who was she? What was the point of the call?
Exactly. Who was she? What did she really want? Was she fishing for information? Was it something else entirely? This call wasn't just a weird event. It became effectively the last potential lead for a long, long time. And it just hangs there, this huge question mark over the whole case. It really shows how one piece of strange, possibly misleading information can just muddy the waters for decades.
Yeah, a total dead end, but one that keeps you wondering. So after they returned home to Ibaraki without Shinya, what did the parents do? They didn't just give up, right?
Oh, absolutely not. Keiko and Masanobu Matsuoka were relentless. They went on dozens of TV shows pleading for information. They even took the step of publicly releasing their home phone number, hoping someone, anyone, would call with a real tip.
Did they get calls?
They did. Lots of them over the years. Tips poured in, alleged sightings. Someone thought they saw him in a nearby city, then maybe a department store hundreds of miles away, a park, the subway. You know how these things go.
Right, sightings that are hard to verify and often turn out to be mistaken identity.
Exactly. None of them ever led anywhere concrete. So through the 90s, the 2000s, the case just, it went cold. Tragically cold.
Until 2018. This is where things take another really bizarre and frankly quite upsetting turn nearly 30 years later.
Yeah. This part is something else.
It happened on this TV show, Urgent Public Search. It's apparently a long-running show in Japan, kind of an investigative documentary series, but it has this unusual format, almost like game show, with an MC, a panel.
Right, it's a bit unique. Their goal is to help find missing people, sometimes people with amnesia who don't know who they are.
And in their spring 2018 season, they featured this young man. He used the name Ryota Wada. He was probably around 25 at the time. And his story was just wild.
Yeah.
He claimed his earliest memory was from when he was about 4 years old. He remembered being on some kind of trip with his parents, ending up at an uncle's house, an uncle he'd never met.
Okay, age 4, a trip. The parallels are immediately obvious.
Exactly. He said this uncle, described as a large man in his 50s or 60s, basically kept him locked up for 17 years. He wasn't allowed out, except for maybe a few dentist visits. Never went to school. He said the uncle called him Ryodo, which is the name he adopted. The last name, Wada, he supposedly took from a nameplate he saw in the house. He claimed this uncle was always on the computer, maybe trading stocks.
17 years confined. That sounds unbelievable.
It does. He claimed he finally escaped in 2014, ended up wandering into a department store in Aichi Prefecture. And geographically, Aichi is kind of halfway between Ibaraki, Shinyo's home, and Tokushima, where he vanished.
Wow. So when this aired, what was the reaction? People must have immediately thought of Shinya.
Oh, absolutely. Japan was buzzing. Online, everywhere. Could this finally be him? The age seemed roughly right. The timing of the first memory at age 4, the location he ended up in. It all seemed to fit disturbingly well. It felt like this massive breakthrough, this huge potential answer after almost 30 years.
A huge glimmer of hope for the family after so long. But it didn't last, did it? How quickly did it start to fall apart?
Almost immediately. It unraveled incredibly fast, even while the show was still airing live.
Live? Really?
Yeah. People started talking online, naturally. Someone on Twitter posted something like, "Hey, I know that guy. He used to work for me at a convenience store. His name is Hisashi Kitazawa."
Oh, wow. During the broadcast?
Apparently so. That info supposedly even got relayed to the show's producers while they were still on air. Then the internet just went into overdrive. People started digging. And they found stuff, quickly. Turns out Wada, or Kitazawa, had been on TV before, back in 2012. and not talking about amnesia.
Oh, is he talking about?
He appeared using the name Takashi Kitazawa then on TV, and even in an article in a major newspaper, the Asahi Shimbun, talking about being a huge fan, like a mega fan of some idol group.
Yeah.
People also dug up yearbook photos, which completely contradicted his story about never attending school because he was locked up.
So the whole captivity story just crumbled.
Completely. The final nail in the coffin, though, was when Shinya's father, Masanobu, who was elderly by then but still searching, publicly addressed all this renewed speculation. They arranged for a DNA test.
And a result.
Heartbreakingly, but definitively, no match. The DNA proved conclusively that this man, Ryota Wada, Hisashi Kitazawa, Takeshi Kitazawa, whatever his real identity, was absolutely not Shinya Matsuoka. The general consensus, though obviously we can't know his motives for sure, was that he likely made the whole thing up for attention, which is just cruel. Leading this poor family, this grieving father, on such an emotional roller coaster after all these years.
It's just awful. It really highlights how vulnerable families are in these situations and how easily false hope can be generated, especially with media and online speculation amplifying everything. The emotional cost is immense. And yeah, there was controversy around the show itself afterwards, people accusing them of maybe staging things for ratings, which is a terrible thought. But for the Matsuoka family, the why behind the hoax was kind of irrelevant. It was just another dead end, another lighter of pain.
Right. So the DNA test closed that specific door, painfully. But it leaves us right back where we started, doesn't it? Shinya is still missing. What actually happened that day remains a complete mystery. Thinking about the solid leads, or lack thereof, that phone call still seems like the biggest enigma. That woman with the Tokushima accent, knowing details about Ibaraki. Given everything we know now, what are the main theories about her?
Yeah, that call is still the most perplexing piece. There are basically a couple of main lines of thought on it. One idea is maybe it was someone connected to the family somehow, not necessarily involved in the disappearance, but maybe someone who knew them, trying to probe, get information.
But why the weird, elaborate lie about the fake student and the fund?
That's the problem with that theory. It seems like a very strange, convoluted way to get information if you already have some connection. Why ask about their return date in such a roundabout way? Maybe to confirm they'd be gone from Tokushima. It just doesn't quite track logically.
Okay, so what's the other main theory?
The other possibility, which feels maybe more plausible given the inconsistencies, is that it was some kind of scam. Or maybe a variation of a known scam.
A scam? How would that work?
Well, there's a type of cold call scam in Japan, often targeting older people, where the caller pretends to be a relative, maybe says, "It's me," but doesn't give a name, hoping the victim will say something like, "Oh, is that you, Hiroshi?" And then the scammer runs with it.
I see. So maybe Kaiko inadvertently gave the caller information.
It's possible. Maybe in the course of the conversation, Kaiko mentioned the kindergarten first or some other detail, and the caller just cleverly improvised, played along, making it seem like she had the information initially.
So the call might have had nothing to do with Shinya's actual disappearance at all. Just a random, cruel coincidence.
It's a possibility. Could this call that seems so specific actually just be a really well-executed, or maybe just lucky deception? The fact that she knew things that weren't public yet, but the school knew nothing? It points towards something deceptive. Whether it was targeted or opportunistic, it's hard to say for sure.
Okay, beyond the phone call, are there other major theories about what might have happened to Shinya? Things people have speculated about over the years?
Yes, definitely. One that always comes up, though it's highly speculative, is the North Korea abduction theory.
Right. That was a known issue with Japanese citizens disappearing. How does it connect here?
It mainly connects because of one of the earliest reported sightings back in April 1989, so just weeks after Shinya vanished. A witness reported seeing a boy who looked like Shinya with a man, maybe in his 30s, acting suspiciously down on the coast in Tokushima.
On the coast?
Yeah. And the witness said when the man realized he was being watched, he quickly led the boy into a white car and drove off. Given that abductions to North Korea often happen from coastal areas, well, people made the connection. Shinya is sometimes listed among potential victims, although there's absolutely no concrete proof in his case. But the location of that alleged sighting keeps the theory alive for some.
Chilling possibility. Are there less sinister theories? More mundane, maybe?
Well, there's the grim but unfortunately realistic possibility of an accident. He was a small child, 4 years old, in a rural area he wasn't familiar with, near woods, near a river.
So, like, he wandered off and fell into something. or got lost.
Exactly. Maybe he fell into a storm drain or got disoriented in the woods or went near the river. Tragic accidents like that do happen, especially with young children. The initial search was extensive, yes, but in that kind of terrain, it's sadly possible for someone small to remain hidden. It's a heartbreaking thought and unprovable now, but it's a possibility that has to be considered.
So many possibilities, and none of them leading to an answer. Decades now, Shinya Matsuoka is still missing. We've had the massive searches, that baffling phone call sightings that went nowhere, and that awful false hope from the TV show in 2018. The truth just remains out of reach. In this case, it really makes you think, doesn't it? Not just about the pain of not knowing, but about how fragile everything feels when you have so little solid information, when motives are completely unclear, and even hope can be twisted and used against you. Looking back at everything we've discussed, what single detail or question about this case stands out most to you? Something for our listeners to really think about. We can only hope truly that wherever Shinya is, somehow he's okay, and that his family, especially his parents who have searched for so long, might one day find some peace, some answers. Thank you for joining us today as we share this deeply perplexing story.